It has been over 200 years since our exile from St. Vincent, and somehow we have managed to survive as an identifiable group of people. We have managed to preserve our language and our cultural traditions up to this point in time. I think that the main reason for that is that the Garifuna person is not individualistic. The traditional Garifuna person is a member of a group, and he does not rely on himself as an individual for his own survival. So that there has been a strong sense of community among us. In that community, we have spoken our language, we have performed our rituals, we have gone about the business of surviving, and our culture, our music, our ritual, our everything has been interwoven into that way of life.
Garifuna Dwell respects themselves. Garifuna Dwell respects older people. Garifuna Dwell respects the environment. Now, if I'm related to the earth, then I'm not going to harm the earth. If I'm related to you, I'm going to be good to you and you're going to be good to me. Hence, Aubu Amurnu, that concept of reciprocity, is very key to the Garifuna understanding of who he is and the cosmos around him. I would like to think that the Garifuna understanding of its spirituality and its relationship with God is different than the Santeria and the Shango and the Obia. There should be no confusion at all in your being a Garifuna and you being a Christian. There isn't a saint in our spirituality as such that we make sacrifices for. It's purely the ancestor. We believe that the ancestor, the older the ancestor, the wiser the ancestor, and the more respect that ancestor should have from us. And so if we rely on the ancestor, then the ancestor is going to lead us in the correct way. Many will argue, especially the religious leaders of the established churches, will argue that there is no such thing as a Garifuna religion. I will always maintain that there is that height of spirituality in the Garifuna that it can qualify to be a religion. Now, I would imagine that a lot of people would contend that it is not a religion because they do not see it as a way of life. But Garifuna Dwell is a way of life. I'm comfortable with living it. I'm comfortable with being a Garifuna. As a matter of fact, before I'm a priest, I'm a Garifuna. So I always say when I'm introducing myself, I am a Garifuna priest, not the other way around. Because I do not see a contradiction and because I do not see a separation, I am comfortable in the temple, in the ancestral house. I have no problem. I am comfortable at a night. I am comfortable when we're bathing the dead. Lemes, as a matter of fact, the word that is commonly used for mass. Lemes is not mass as such. Lemes is is a celebration of healing. All right, like all of our celebrations are celebrations of healing. If I am going to be the priest that the church expects me to be, I have to be who I am. Otherwise, to use the words of my bishop, I would be the shell. I would be a shell of a priest with no substance. When we have Dugu, when we have the ancestral celebrations in the ancestral house, it's not only for this family, but we invite people. People are supposed to come from all over. And when people come from Labuga, for instance, from Honduras, even from the United States, they bring songs with them. Okay? And that is one way of expanding our repertoire, if you wish, of the songs that we know.
There are songs associated with different parts of the Dugu. The part where we meet the Adugaria who go out to collect fish and seafood, and they're met at the seaside, and there's a procession. There's a particular type of song for that. There are songs for the opening parts of the Dugu. There are songs for the offering. There are songs for killing chickens. And there are also some songs where the buye is required to come out with his maracas, his rattle. And there are those where he's not supposed to do that, and you're not supposed to mix them up.
One of the unique things to me about the Garifuna spirituality is that the sacred and the profane seem to exist simultaneously. In the Western understanding of religion and spirituality, that could never happen. When you're taking the food out of the ancestral house to go and either bury it or throw it into the sea, the drums have to play. There has to be dancing and merrymaking when that is going on. There is a lot of healing that takes place around Beluria. Right after the person is buried, we have the 9 days of prayers. The 9 night itself is a very sad moment because that is when you say the final farewell. Drums is a new invention for the Beluria, but people used to clap hands and they used to dance, and they went all night. Then we graduated from the clapping of hands to boxes. You remember the times when we used to have boxes, wooden boxes. Then we graduated from there to Tukupara. Then from there, the drums came, so that we have drums now for the celebration.
When I first listened to those drums, when I first saw this girl in Sandbite dancing and singing, like shouting, crying, smiling, laughing at the same time, moving her hips in such a way with those drums. I was like, what's that? Is that a Beluria? Is that 9 nights? That happened when somebody's dead? Oh my God, that's something to be known for the whole world.
Now, a lot of people, and I think this is from the Western influence, a lot of people do not like, especially today, do not like the levity, the celebration, the singing and the dancing at Beluria. But that too is healing.
Punta is a 9-night dance. You know, you do it in these little corners and your mother hears about you the following day. My mother used to say, I heard about you that you were dancing the punta, and why do you do things like that? You're a well-brought-up young lady. The punta is a dance that they would say it's not decent, maybe because it is a sensuous dance. It's a courtship dance. Punta is a dance of the hips, of the waistline, very little shoulder movement. The feet move almost invisible because you're not supposed to be shuffling a lot and you're not supposed to be moving a lot the way they do in Punta Rock. No eye contact with the male, but certainly there is that communication, there's that sexual innuendo which is transmitted to the male, and he is the one who goes, you know, crazy all over the place, going behind the woman, in front of the woman, kneeling down, etc., etc. And her head is almost, you know, high in the air. She doesn't care what he's doing. But that is the message of the punta.
In the very same manner we link reggae to Jamaica, we are seeing punta being very Belizean, punta being the Garifuna music that is linking Belize with the rest of the world. The Garifuna culture has played a very prominent role in this entire country of Belize, in that the Garifuna are the flag bearers of the culture. They are the ones who we are using as examples in the promotion of other cultures. I am showing them that if the Garifuna, that is only 7% of this population, can do that, you can do it. We can do it.
Around 1966, 1967, some colleagues and I had noted that whenever there was a group would want to present Garifuna dances, Garifuna songs, all they did was walk around, pick up one or two old people. At the time, they seemed to have been depicting just a lot of drunken people and a lot of old people, maybe even people who were not able to speak about what was going on, even within the dances. This was around 1966, 1967. Shortly after self-government, when certainly we were beginning to forge a Belizean identity, and an identity which necessitated that we, as Garinagu or as Creoles or as Maya Indians, be conscious of who we are and what we are. We thought that if we were to choreograph our dances, if we were to do some research, if we were to do some retrieval into what the Wanaragua is, what is Sambai, where did it come from, what are the themes that we have in some of our songs like Paranda, then we would have done something that not only the Garifuna people would be proud of, but also the Belizean people as well. Wuri Baga Baga was called upon by government and other entities not only to perform in Belize, but also to perform abroad. Since that time, what has happened is that in all our Garifuna communities, you have a dance group or the nucleus of a Garifuna dance group. In our schools, we have the same.
Research plays a lot in the Garifuna elements that I use within the national company choreographies. In the sense that once you research and you capture the true Garifuna spirit and true Garifuna culture, you would be able to bring it back to the studio and stylize it and put it onto the stage using possible the everyday dances such as the punta. Armando Crescento of Honduras, of the ballet folklorico de Garifuna de Honduras, is one of my mentors. Meeting him and working with him has made me very creative. Looking at his company take the Garifuna culture and use it on stage and touring it worldwide and meeting them in Belize has inspired me to move more and to study more the Garifuna culture. The national company is very young, and we see a very huge future for us. We see, especially in the modern dance era, where to be identified with a Belizean style, we would have to use and research the Garifuna dance movements. Let's say we would work on the punta and seeing the movements of the body and for example, we look at the Cuban style and they have the ripple. They have a very forward motion and a very curvature of the body. We would move side to side, which is a different movement. So we would identify differently. This also would enhance modern dancing in the sense, and the movements of the Jankuna dancers and the Jankuna costumes gives you another way of working the feet of the dancers. Just imagine that being placed within the modern section of the national company.
In Chicago at the Center for Black Music Research, we're looking at what we call interart, and that is how the arts interact, the relationship between music, dance, and costumes, and language also very much important. This particular project is to examine the music, the dance, and the visual arts, so the costumes of John Canoe, of Nicaragua, and to analyze how they interrelate and how they help to express ethnic identity, Garifuna identity. As far as a tradition of New World tradition, it has survived and been retained here in the Garifuna culture and has been preserved much more than in any of the other New World African-derived cultures. And I think that's very, very important, because as African Americans look at the Garifuna John Canoe or Nicaragua, they can see how things have been retained. It's a window back to Africa, but through the Caribbean and specifically through the Garifuna culture.
When you talk about Garifuna music, you're talking about songs. And of course, songs have words, songs tell stories. So right away you see the connection between language and music. If we lose our language, then our songs are bound to go as well.
I find that the Garifuna language works best for me when composing Punta Rock songs. There are certain things that you're able to say in Garifuna that you could not say in any other way. There is a way of describing things. Garifuna adjectives are very profound. Any other language would just not do it justice, even though I may lose a fraction of my audience by zeroing in on the Garifuna language.
When you listen to a Garifuna song, and it could be any song, you see the people dancing. But when you listen to the words, those words would never be anything you want to dance to if it were in another culture. That's a Punta song. When will I ever stop crying for you, my father? But you see people going at it.
There is a message behind the song. Each song tells a story. As a matter of fact, we perceive the songs, we speak of the song as images capturing reality, telling a story, or capturing a perception of an individual or an event. And so it is put into words, and the words are put to music. The Garifuna language is an Arawak language. It's essentially an Arawak language, but it also has Carib. There is a difference between the way men are supposed to speak and the way women and children speak. In other words, certain expressions are marked for male use, and women are not supposed to use them. Like a man will say, ah yeah, meaning come here. A woman is not supposed to say ah yeah. A woman or a child is supposed to say higabunu, which means exactly the same thing. A woman is not supposed to say ah yeah, but a man can say higabunu. In other words, the man can speak the way the woman does, but the woman is not supposed to speak the way the man does. I don't think there are many languages in the world where that phenomenon occurs, where there are certain words and expressions reserved for male use, exclusively for male use. Modern feminists might be tempted to assert that Garifuna is a sexist language, but nothing can be further from the truth. First, there was the Arawak expansion in northern South America, and then they moved on to the islands. Later came the Carib expansion, and they did it in a way that the Carib men displaced Arawak men in their villages because they were better militarily. So we ended up with a situation where the men spoke Carib and the women spoke Arawak. But of course, children learn language from their mothers more than they do from their fathers. And so in the end, it was the woman's language that prevailed. It is only among the older people, the oldest men, that you'll find that kind of language still being spoken.
No, saga binafi, mostly the ago. Ah, Raspat Nabuba, no, Yagana Car, no, Bidibago. Ibida Tibugo Loom, Low Yalifula, Grigatola Davo. When La Ruga binafi, Chilu Car, Budawa Rahuto, Tabago. Tachulu Jetty, Nitia by Remulubata Sansago. Luteremoni, Bata Sansa. Shaggy piam piam, we bandasi. Shaggy piam piam, we bandasi. Ragagudu.
As Garifuna people, we are not literate. Our literacy is confined to English, or in some other countries, Spanish. Our literacy has hardly been applied to our own language, so that we have not benefited from literacy where the preservation of our knowledge, our wisdom, our skills, and so on are concerned. We rely on the oral tradition for keeping our art and culture and wisdom going.
I never understand everything he said. And I'm a young, my mama gone States, left me my granny, and then my granny was stuck. Long Garifuna to me and my granny dead. And I thought my mama come back, and then I live with my mom. And I thought my mama, she at Belize right now, and I thought she not talk Garifuna to me. She talk Creole. I really want to learn Garifuna, but they not teach it at school.
We from the University of the West Indies School of Continuing Studies have done some projects. One was the teaching of the Garifuna language. We did that in Belize City. The aim was to, as much as possible, teach the language, not only to Garifuna, people who no longer speak it, but also to others, to learn it. It's a little discouraging to say, but I remember the language program. We advertised it very extensively in Belize City. As you know, Belize City has the second largest population of Garifuna people. And despite all the normal publicity, we only got a handful. Now, it's always easy to blame the people, of course, but I think it goes a little bit deeper than that. There is that very strong assimilationist stance coming in from the dominant society. And I think the end result is that people like the Garifuna end up being very confused.
maybe wanting to learn the language, but not really getting that strong sense that I really should do it because there's a need to do it.
I have continued to insist on this to my friends in the Ministry of Education. It is time that education begins to recognize that this is a multilingual, multicultural society and find a place for various languages and cultures, including Garifuna, in the curriculum of our schools, so that if a young man or a young lady is able to read and write his or her own language, that it not be in spite of the school the way it currently is, but rather because of the school, that the school should be able to take credit for it.
There is a underlying principle of us recognizing the first languages of people in this country. For that sector of the population where Garifuna is a first language, the hope is for Garifuna to be taught formally in schools and not used as the basis for the teaching of the second language, which is English. We are pioneering with it in the Stann Creek and parts of the Toledo district at the primary level. The students actually have scheduled time in Garifuna. It's taught formally, it's examined as part of the curriculum. We are hoping that within 3 years we would be able to evaluate the progress of it, to look at some of the challenges that it presents. And within 3 years or so, I think we should be able to expand this program significantly throughout the country.
I think it is necessary that the powers that be recognize the importance of including literacy in our native languages in the curriculum of our schools, because only so would we be able to apply the benefits of literacy to our language, where we can develop a literature, apply it to our art, apply it to our songs. It bothers me that now that Punta Rock has made it big, not only nationally but in the region and maybe even internationally, I look at the labels of the cassettes and the CDs and find that the writing is not standardized, that the writing is atrocious, as a matter of fact, because people try to write it the way they think it ought to be written because they've never been schooled in it. We realize that people do not know how to write Garifuna, how to spell the words, how to read it, and that there was a need for a tool that they could use. The People's Garifuna Dictionary represents an effort to do something about the erosion of our language. I had done some work on standardizing the orthography, and I considered it unfortunate that whatever work had been done before was not really accessible to the people. Richard Hadel had done some work along with Roman Zuniga in St. Bite, but it was accessible only to anthropologists. You couldn't go to a bookstore to purchase that work. Some work had been done at St. John's College back in 1950, 1951, thereabouts. But again, that was very limited edition. It was done in mimeograph. And that is really what motivated us to produce the People's Garifuna Dictionary, and the very name that we chose shows that our intent was to make it available to the people, to accelerate the process of publishing, writing and publishing works written in Garifuna, written about Garifuna, as well as in Garifuna. We are doing what we can with our limited, very, very limited resources in the National Garifuna Council. But there is so much that needs to be done that it is impossible to more than barely scratch the surface without some help, because we do not have the resources to be able to really make an impact.
The benefit is straightforward. If you look at it from the point of view of a dying culture, which I think the Garifuna is, as many other indigenous cultures, And when you lose a culture, you lose an encyclopedia or volumes of encyclopedia. You lose a bit of humanity. You lose many, many things.
Drums of my fathers, rumbling in my bones. Organ music. Drums of my fathers, beating in my mind. Jukebox blaring. Drums of my fathers, capturing my soul. Sing a hymn to Mary. Words of my fathers tumbling from my mouth. Speak the Queen's English. Drums of my fathers, of my grandfathers, of my ancestors, drumming in my psyche. Drums of my fathers.